Timeline as far as the kingdom of Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, kingdom of God. And that would be a little different on yours. Yeah, it's let's see, it would be this book is a little. It's yours is bigger. Revelation 13. Oh, you got it, don't you? Yeah. Mm-hmm. You got a bigger picture too. I like that. And you got the Babylon, which is the Gold Kingdom, also called the Lion Kingdom. You have Persia, called the Silver Kingdom, also called the Bear Kingdom. In Daniel 8, you have a ram and a goat, which would be the rise of Alexander the Great. And then in Daniel 11, you got one of the kings of the north, that's Antiochus Epiphanes. You have the Bronze Kingdom, which is Greece, and that's some of the happenings was under that Greek kingdom, and its later breakup that Antiochus was brought into existence. Then Rome is the Lion Kingdom, and it has dinosaur horns. And then the kingdom of God is the rock, in Daniel 2, carved out of a rock made without hands. And in Daniel 7, the Ancient of Days, the Son of Man. So that timeline starts when they kept track of history in the Old Testament. And just let me say that, I mean, I'm humbled and flattered to be here. You people are very conscientious people. I have a lot of respect for you. And I have a lot of respect for Chuck, and Chuck can do just about anything he wants to do. He's had the expertise, and if he puts his mind to anything, he can do it. But Chuck, it's very obvious, has made up his mind like Moses, he's going to suffer with the children of God. He's chosen to suffer with the children of God. He can do anything he wants to, but he suffers with us. And I know he don't like flattery, and it's not going to make him any better or worse. But I appreciate his having this class and using his expertise and using his facilities to.
Yeah, we're very thankful that we're part of the congregation with him.
Oh, absolutely.
He works hard for what he does.
He's a good example.
You guys have a great congregation. I'm so happy to be. John has been preaching great messages.
Oh, absolutely.
And I was in his Bible study on Sunday night. So I'm really at home, very much at home. And you're asking me to assist. I'm taking it slow. I'm here not to be a prince. I'm here to be a servant. I'm a slave. I'm just here to serve. That's it. And anything you guys ask me to do, I'll do it. But I'm not here to be a prince. I'm not here to be a boss. I'm here to be a servant. And you already have strong leadership. So I'm a followership. This subject is something that I've dealt considerably with. On page 343, I have that lion, the bear, the leopard, and the four of Alexander the Great's generals, and then the last beast. Now you have to understand that after this Roman beast, this beast right here, that's the end of beastology. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by that? What is beastology?
Does it mean nations?
Yeah, it's a study of nations relevant to certain beasts. So if you got a ferocious nation like Babylon, it's lion. If you got a powerful nation like Rome with iron feet, you got a dragon.
So the character.
The beastology is
based on the character of the.
It's the character, exactly. Yeah. And then you have a leopard. That's Alexander the Great. He's the leopard. And he's a flying leopard. He's got wings. So he went across the world by the time he was 33 years of age. That's how quick he conquered the world. So you need to know a little history. But after Rome, that's the end of beastology. The history of beastology is gone forever. Why? You never answer my question.
My first thought was there's only two kingdoms, the kingdom of light and the kingdom of darkness. That's my first thought.
That's a good answer. But in the days of the Roman Empire, God set up a kingdom made without hands. So the history of the world now is no longer nations.
Yeah, because the nation of Israel was his chosen people, right? Out of all the people in the whole world, not because they were anybody special, but he chose them.
And all nations in relative to Israel, they were the opposing nations, and they were the surrounding nations, and the warfare was with the sword. They had to preserve the seed. After Christ came, there's no need for national identity anymore. Now Satan is doing everything he can to contradict that.
Right.
So Satan raises up false prophets who are still looking for identity for Russia, China, Middle East. They want all these people to be in prophecy. But there's nothing in the Word of God at all. There is no beast to identify the Middle East. There is no beast to identify Russia. There is no beast to identify China, any world power. So news commentators and preachers want to continue these prophetic symbols and try to make them relevant to today. And they've been antiquated ever since Rome fell, because the horn was broke. Okay, you see the horn here, and the horn was broke into three pieces. Rome was split, the Lombards, the Ravenna, and the Rome. And out of that, in the horn in Revelation 13, it was broken in the book of Daniel, and in Revelation 13, the horn out of Daniel grew. So that horn grew out of Daniel. So there's only one nation, if you want to call it, one religious institution, if you want to call it, that came out of Rome that's going to be with us to the end of the world. No more nations, just religious Rome.
Papal Rome.
Yeah. So pagan Rome was broke, and then the horn grew again through papal Rome. Roman Catholicism is nothing but the ghost that came out of the ashes of old pagan Rome. Pagan Rome fell in 476.
One of my history professors here at James Madison remarked to our class that it was one of the great mysteries of history how that political Rome could fall and religious Rome arise from its ashes. Yeah. She said it was a mystery.
Yeah, and it is. It's called the mystery of iniquity in the Bible. So she was close. She just didn't put iniquity on the end of it. The word iniquity is lawlessness. If it wasn't for Rome, you still have one church. Mm-hmm. But Rome was the first to break off. Of course, you have the Greek Orthodox, and you have others. Okay, now there's another chart I have. So if you want timeline charts, that's on page 343. My next timeline chart is in 386. So you're going to go about 30 or 40 more pages. And here you have the similarities between the opposition faced by Daniel and John. Daniel in 562 prophesied Antiochus Epiphanes in 146 BC. Antiochus established a world Hellenism. Hellenism was a Greek word for a culture that was anti-God. And you have to understand when you read these prophecies that the heathen rage against God and against his throne. Daniel said, why do the heathen rage? The heathen have always raged against God and his throne. The heathen people, not normal people, but heathen people. Heathen people are irreligious, powerful leaders with a very acute intelligence, and their job is to destroy covenant people. And so Antiochus Epiphanes hated covenant people. That's why it says in the book of Daniel that he hated covenant people. We're going to see that in just a minute. And Daniel prophesied the end of the Jewish world. Now John comes in 68 A.D., and his enemy is pagan Rome. Antiochus Epiphanes, his enemy was Greek Hellenism, but John's enemy was pagan Rome. And then the apostate Greek and papal Rome and her denominational children, their whole concept is to use politico-religious power to destroy covenant people. Covenant people are people who say Christ is the king.
Right.
So they don't want Christ to be king. They got to figure out a way to get rid of him. Satan knows that Christ is king. So Satan puts it in the heart of religious people to dethrone Christ. Let us assault the throne of God. Let's remove Christ and bring him down. That's still going on today. But it's through apostate Greek and papal Rome and her denominational children and cults. There would be no cults, no denominations, if there was no apostasy. Apostasy breeds division. And then, of course, John speaks of the end of the Rome and the world, whereas Daniel only spoke of the end of the Jewish world. John speaks of the end of all. Okay, now I've given you an overview and what they call timeline. Okay, now let's get right into the scriptures here that my brother here asked me to handle. Of course, Daniel 2 is the easiest of all. And Daniel's vision was that he saw a kingdom made without hands. And so this would be the kingdom that would come after the first four kingdoms. And so the first four kingdoms are that God would raise up a mystery. This is a mystery. The God of heaven would set up a kingdom made without hands. And this was during the Babylonian kingdom, see? The king of Babylon. This is about 586 BC. And this kingdom here, O king, in verse 31, it says, you were looking, and behold, there was a single great statue. It was large, it was of extraordinary splendor. It was in front of you, and its appearance was awesome. The head of the statue was gold. And he said, Daniel said to him, you are the head of gold. And then the breast and its arms of silver, and that is the next kingdom that came, Persia. And the belly and its thighs of bronze, that's the kingdom of Greece. Its legs were iron, that's the kingdom of Rome. So in one verse, basically, he gave from 586 all the way down to 460 A.D. He gave about 800 years of history in one verse. Now remember, these are ancient empires. They go way back. 586 years before Jesus Christ was even born. Okay? And so he says that this Iron Kingdom, Rome, is going to be weakened and it's going to fall. And so the gold, Babylon, Persia, Greece, they all fell. Not a trace of them was found. They're gone. But the stone that struck the statue became a great mountain. So this is the end of historical nations here. Because the stone that came from heaven is the kingdom of Christ. So all you have now is the kingdom of Christ set up, and then you have opposing fractions fighting him. In every generation there's someone fighting Christ. All these other kingdoms rose and fell and rose and fell, but the kingdom of Christ is forever. So the rise and fall of nations is all done with. Christ is on the throne. There's nothing to challenge him anymore. He's finished. The only thing he can do is try to take Christ off the throne through his own people and through secular political powers. But the war is against Christ now. Satan's war is against Christ. There is no nation that he cares about. All nations are equal. They're all going to hell. Any questions so far?
Just to put a reference verse with that, it's Daniel 2:44. In the days of those kings,
Yeah.
the kings of the Roman Empire,
Yeah.
the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, nor shall its sovereignty be left to another. So that's our fallback verse.
That's it.
And that
I
takes-
didn't get down that far. I was kind of going ahead of myself.
That takes care of the historical school of the book of Revelation.
That's the end of the historical school, yeah. Now, the
What?
the Church of Christ Non-Instrumental are still trying to do historical school. The historical school, there's futurism and history, and then there's capitulation. Capitulation is that Christ is on the throne, and every generation, people are, they capitulate. It goes over and over again. But in the Old Testament, it was historical. One nation fell, another one took its place. Now, no nation in particular, and any nation in general, doesn't make any difference. Now that Christ is on the throne. Now, he was on the throne even going these Babylon, Syria, Greece, and Rome. He was on the throne. Yes, he was. But no one knew it. Except Satan, and he put it in the hearts of leaders to try to kill the Messianic seed.
Wow.
That's why Antiochus was so insanely bent on destroying the temple. Because if you would have destroyed the temple, then you would have destroyed the gathering place for the seed to gather, and the seed would have been dispersed, and the seed eventually would have been destroyed. Christ would never have been born. Satan put it in his heart, say, hey, come on, we're coming right down to the last kingdom now, okay? We're now down, after Greece is going to come Rome. This is the end. So we better stop the seed right now. So Antiochus was the great enemy of the covenant seed. Now the seed is the New Testament. So Satan doesn't fight nations anymore. He doesn't fight the Jews anymore. He don't care about the Jews. All he cares about is New Covenant Christianity. The word. New Covenant Christianity. If there's just 3 of them, he can't stand it. It's a bit like the National Education Association. They can't stand homeschools. If there were just 5 kids being homeschooled, it would drive them crazy. They can't stand it. If there's just 5 Christians, the religious world can't stand it. They don't want you to be a New Covenant Christian. They don't want you to have King Jesus only. You can't go and preach in evangelical Christian congregations and say, Jesus Christ is a king once for all, final. They'll say, yeah, but he's coming back to reign on earth someday. See how Satan twisted?
Yep.
Satan can't stand it. That's why millennialism is so popular. And millennialism is still looking for nations. They said, oh, the 10 kingdoms here, that it broke into 10 parts. That's the Holy Roman, that's the common market. They had 10 European nations. Now the European common market doesn't even have Britain, so they're finished. But boy, when they had those European nations in a common market over in Europe. He said, that's it. That's the 10 kingdoms in the Bible. See, they're still looking for a counterpart in history. It's just not there. After Rome, you only got 2 institutions. You got Rome and all her children, and you got the bride of Christ. Rome was called the whore. That's why you got the whore here, riding the beast. And the bride of Christ is the pure bride. But she's got a lot of children. Rome has a lot of children. So,
Where's Muhammad fit in?
What'd you say?
Where does Muhammad fit in?
Well, Muhammad was he was a takeoff from false doctrine taught by early Christians that wanted to dethrone Christ. And they called him an angel. They called him a great man. They didn't believe he was the only begotten Son of the living God. That's why John has been really preaching a lot about the fact that Christ, if you don't believe Christ is equal to God, 100% God, as much God as God the Father is, then it's heresy. John says, don't even bid a man Godspeed. If he comes in here and he doesn't believe that Christ is absolute God, then you can't fellowship with him. Get him out.
Right.
You either convert him or get him out and don't even let him in your home. That's a very important doctrine because that doctrine goes back to Islam. They say Jesus is a prophet, good man, but he is not God. Okay? So it came from at least 3 great theologians that lived in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th century. One's name was Sibelius. The other guy's name was Arian. And the other guy's name was Nestorius. Now these theologians in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th century did everything they could to strip Jesus Christ from the throne of divinity. Remember, Satan doesn't want Christ on the throne, right? So by saying that he is not the Christ, the Son of the living God, only begotten, the only one of his kind, Son of God, then they've stripped him from the throne, but they've done it in a subtle way. Are you with me? Oh, yeah, I believe in Jesus. But he's not really equal to God. So they quit fighting Jesus with an assault, direct attack. The Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons, many denominations, the Unitarians, and all of these groups, what they do basically is say, come on, let's not get too excited about Christ being God. But he's a great man. He's a great prophet. That's Islam. But Muhammad's the Holy Spirit.
Would you mind to repeat those three theologians?
Sibelius, Sabellius.
Okay.
Arius, Arius.
Okay.
And Nestorian philosophy.
Thank you.
And then you got Islam. Islam has done more than all 3 of those guys put together to destroy the deity of Christ.
Right.
They have more people believing that Christ is not the Son of God, only begotten, than ever dreamed possible. Now, where do the Catholics fit in? Okay, now, the Catholics have got to have a strong Jesus. They have to have a strong Jesus. So they're not going to go along with this. So the Crusaders said, we can't have this teaching. So the Crusades were fought over the deity of Christ. So most of Europe was accepting Arianism and Sabellianism and the fact that Christ is not equal to God. And the Catholics went to war, not because they loved Jesus, but they believed that the Pope was Filarius, Filii Dei, which means that the Pope is Jesus Christ on earth. So if you have a weak Jesus, you got a weak Pope. So the Catholics were fighting to defend the deity of the Pope, not the deity of Christ, because he's supposed to be God's substitute son. So Jesus left, so God wanted to have a substitute son, so the Pope became his substitute for Jesus.
Vicarious.
Yeah, vicarious.
Vicar.
Vicarious means a sacrificial substitute son.
Wow.
That's exactly what they believe.
The stunning conflict I'm just picking up is that Daniel didn't include the modern day conflict between Islam and Christianity being the end of the world,
Well, remember that the end of the world,
the physical world.
yeah, the end of the
Like
world,
bonfire, you know, nuclear
the end of the
war.
world could only come after that the horn began to grow. We're going to see here what we're talking about here.
Here's a couple of reference points for you. John wanted you to have about the 10
Okay,
kings.
okay.
If you need them.
Okay. All right, now, Daniel 7. We already looked at the horns in verse 8. I was looking at the dreadful beast. This is the terrifying, extreme beast. He had large iron teeth. He devoured and crushed and trampled down the remainder with his feet in verse 7, Daniel 7:7. And that's good. I'm glad you got that. That's good. And he said, I was looking at the horns, and behold, another horn, a little one, came up among them. Now, 3 of the first horns were pulled out by the roots. So, as you look at this beast, you see the first 3 horns are ripped off. The chart of my beast. So, those 3 horns were ripped out. In order for Rome to become a Roman Catholic instead of a Christian, they had to establish Rome as the center of their religion. Ravenna became a religious, what they call the Lombards and the Ravennas. Those are the 2 who gave their support to Rome. They had to have support, and so these 3 horns. Now, that's the best definition I can give you. I may not be 100% right on that, but that's what most historians teach that I've studied. And the thrones were set up in verse 9. The Ancient of Days took his seat. His vesture was like white snow. And so this is the Ancient of Days, God the Father.
Verse 9.
In verse 9. And a river of fire was flowing. And people, the court sat. The books were open in verse 10. He's surrounded by myriads of angels. And I kept looking because of the sound of the boastful words which the horn was speaking. So this horn is growing out of Rome, and they're blaspheming God. They're saying sprinkle babies, infant baptism, purgatory, stream unction, sacraments, and the priest has to pray for you in order for you to have your sins forgiven. They're just all kind of blasphemies, okay? And in my book at the end, I have all the blasphemies of Rome. You've already studied that. So the rest of the beast, their dominion was taken away. So that means their dominion's gone. Persia, Greece, Syria, Assyria, Alexander the Great, they're gone. They're finished. This is it. This is the end of what you call historical prophecy. The Non-Instrumental Church of Christ says, no, we've got to look in history for a continuation of history after verse 12. And so, oh man, a Church of Christ historicist, I've never seen anybody study history the way they do. They write volumes of books trying to find a continuous history from Rome. And they'll go into the Holy Roman Empire, Charlemagne, they'll come down to Alexander the Great, and they'll come down to the Tsar and Hitler. The problem with historicists is that if they don't hit it right on the nose, something else happens 20 years later, they got to revamp it.
Right.
Are you with me?
They even have the British naval battles, Trafalgar. And
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they're looking for something in prophecy. That, everything. I had one. Some guy was talking about the French and Indian War. Another guy was talking about the Spanish-American War. Boy, that's right here in prophecy. But it says right here, this is the end of prophecy. This is the end of historical prophecy. He says that. He said, for the rest of the beast, their dominion was taken away. There is no more beastology. Beastology is nations that were opposed to Christ, Look, Christ came. He got the job done, right? So no nation is going to stop the seed. No nation is going to keep Christ from sitting on the throne. He's on the throne, okay? So nobody can stop that. Did you know that everybody has to concede that in Jesus Christ? It's not to their best interest. Not to concede that Jesus Christ is the Son of God and He's God. I mean, they don't want to debate that. You're sitting on a court. Say I'm out here on the street and I'm preaching and I'm saying, coming here to the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm going to preach Jesus Christ. So somebody comes along and said, look, you're disturbing the peace and you're not allowed to preach religion in the marketplace. I say, why? I say, why do you say that? Well, I'm just saying it. I say, I'll tell you why you're saying it. You're either an agnostic, you're either an atheist, or you're a Satanist. I said, if you're an agnostic, you don't know if there's a God or not. So that's religious. If you're an atheist, you believe that you're against God. So that's religion too. So I'm preaching religion and you're contradicting me. You're going religion too, right on the same marketplace. And if you're a Satanist, you don't want me to preach Christ because you worship Satan. So you're opposing me, and you really are more religious than I am because you don't want religion. You are religious. You're either an agnostic, an atheist, or you're a Satanist. So they can't win that battle. They can't win it. You best just keep your mouth shut. Because this is the end. Christ is on the throne. They can't afford to attack Jesus Christ. They lose every time. Don't you believe that Jesus Christ existed? No, we believe He existed. So you don't believe He's the Son of God. They're afraid of that because even their father, the devil, believes He's the Son of God. So you got to really go for the government here because this is the end right here. I kept looking in the night visions. Behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like the Son of Man comes. So when the Son of Man goes to heaven, that's the end of historicism. That's the end of nations. He's on the throne. Everyone wanted to stop Him from ascending to the throne, right? Now He's on the throne. Who's going to stop Him? Babylon failed. Syria failed. Greece failed. He came. Antiochus was the last. That's why he's so important. We're going to see him in prophecy. And sometimes we're reading about Antiochus, we think it's a Catholic church, but it's not. But Antiochus was the last one to keep the seed from coming. And he failed miserably. All right, so his kingdom is one that will not be destroyed. That's verse 14. Look, our Christ is on the throne. We're winners. We can't lose.
Amen.
We cannot lose. This battle's over. The victory's won. It's settled on Jesus' side. No nation can take Him off the throne, okay? That's for me, Dan, and my spirit was distressed because Jesus wasn't on the throne yet. This was all prophecy. This is 586 years before Jesus was even born when He wrote that. That's a long time. That's half a century. So I approached him, and one of those who were standing by, and he said, "What's the exact meaning of this?" And so he told me. He interpreted it to me. He said the beasts were 4 in number. They came and they went. Saints of the highest will receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever. That's what I've been telling you, right? We are the saints. 500 years later, we have saints. Now, there were no saints back in those days because you couldn't be sanctified. The blood of Christ hadn't been shed yet. So he says here, the meaning of the 10 horns are on its head, and another word which came up. He says it had eyes and a mouth. Now look, we're dealing with great boast. We're dealing with a guy that's very smart. He's got eyes, and he's a very good speaker. A Jesuit priest is a very articulate person. You better know what you're talking about when you fight them, because they're very clever, very deceitful. I kept looking. The horde were waging war with the saints and overpowering them. Now, both Rome, pagan Rome, and then later papal Rome, killed Christians. Now remember, I said we are victorious because our Christ is on the throne. So when they killed us, we just go to be with Jesus. So they're dying in hopes of going to be with Jesus. So they're overpowering them. It looks like they're going to win, but they're not going to win. This prophecy tells us that we're going to win. So the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was passed in favor of the saints of the highest one. Now here's where we get in trouble right here. The saints took possession of the kingdom, okay, verse 22, okay. Now look, we got the kingdom. We are in the kingdom of Jesus Christ. That's our kingdom, that's his kingdom. And it's been here for 2,000 years. So Daniel is looking to the time when all of these nations, even Babylon, going to fall. Kingdom of Christ is going to be established. Saints are going to get into the kingdom, okay. So thus he says, the fourth beast will be a fourth kingdom on earth. Now Daniel didn't know Rome was going to be a kingdom. He didn't know that. Babylon was a king then. Now Rome's going to be the king. And he'll be different from the others. Rome's going to be the most powerful kingdom. Next to the Hittites, they're the longest kingdom to ever reign, over 600 and some years. As for the 10 horns in this kingdom, 10 kings will arise, and another will rise after them, and he will be different from the previous ones and will subdue 3 kings. That's the 3 kings. Okay, now, these are the kingdoms that came out of this, at the bottom of this chart, Daniel 7:2-7, you got a big chart there. You had Egypt, you had Assyria, you had Babylon, you had Persia, you had Greece, you had Rome, and then you had the breakup of the Roman Empire, and then you had political Rome breaking into papal Rome. So those kingdoms came up, and there were 10 kingdoms altogether if you take Egypt and you go back to Assyria and you take other kingdoms, and then I have all the kingdoms right here, the 10 kingdoms that the kingdom broke up into on page 345. These kingdoms assisted Rome. In other words, for some reason, there's something about having a cathedralism. Cathedralism means the bishop's chair. They've got a bishop sitting there, and cathedral means the chair of the bishop. When I was in Georgia, I was talking to one of my preacher friends, and he says, this is the church we're in. He said, see that chair up there? And I said, yeah. He said, right inside he took me to this big Episcopal church, and right up there was the chair. And he said, no one, there's steps you go up, no one can sit in that chair except the Episcopal bishop. He comes once a year, and that's where he sits at, up there. That's reserved for him only. So cathedralism means the chair. And when he speaks from the chair, that means that he's speaking ex cathedra, from the chair, cathedralism. He is God. When he says something from the chair, it is to be accepted as God, okay? So the Rome began to establish that cathedralism, and people love it. They love that kind of religion. So the Vandals, the Visigoths, the Suevi, the Alans, that's France, the Burgundians, the Franks, that's outside of Germany, the Britons and the Saxons, the Huns, that's around Hungary, the Lombards, and the Ravenna and the Ostrogoths. They all went together, and these nations all said, okay, papacy, we accept you.